folks, here again, and I had somebody ask me a very important question the other day, and that is how I get across the fretboard. And what I do, and I'm not sure what technique this is, but I go off a lot of bar chords. So I'm going to try to show y'all how I get across the fretboard sometimes, and kind of go into a little rabbit hole, if you will, on bar chords, because I think they are chords that are kind of not used a lot sometimes, and they can be really useful, and a lot of times they can help you in lots of ways. So let's get right into this, shall we? Okay, first and foremost, if you're learning on guitar and you've already got your open chords, and you know how to use one of these things, one of these fancy things called a capo. Essentially, when you're making bar chords, you're using your pointer finger as one of these. So, like say, if you want a G chord, you would move up to the 3rd fret, take your index finger, bar all the way across the fretboard. And some guitars that are narrower necked are easier to do this than wider necks, but essentially the same thing. You take your index finger and you bar all the way across, and then you basically make the E chord with your last 3 fingers. And that is a G chord that's a bar, what they would call a bar chord. So you can move this bar chord all up and down the fretboard. So you can move this down a half a step, and you would have a F sharp, or what I would call a G flat. And then if you wanted to go to B, you would slide all the way up to the 8th fret. I believe that's right. It's the 8th or 7th fret, I can't remember. I believe anyway. But that's your B chord in a bar. And essentially all you're doing is, not only with a capo and with a bar and across there, you're essentially pretending that it's the nut a lot of times. So, because if you go back down here, you have your open E chord, and then when you bar it, you're just making the E chord with your last 3 fingers. And that can be, like I say, it can be used all the way up the fretboard. That's just one of the bar chords. The other bar chord is if you wanted to go to have a bar chord in C, you would do the same thing. You would bar all the way across here, but instead of making the E, you would take your ring finger and your pinky finger, and you'd move them down to your D string and your G string, and there's your C, which is essentially the same thing. You're making an A chord right here with the last 2 fingers. And what I do sometimes, I will take my middle finger and I kind of help the index finger bar. That is essentially all that I'm doing. And you can slide that up 2 frets. And you have D, another 2 frets up. You have E, Or if you wanted to, or come back down here to the C chord, you wanted to go down to B, you drop it down 1 fret. B flat if you want to drop it down another fret. Or if you really want to make it interesting, come back up to C, you can move it up 3, you have an E flat. If I'm not mistaken. Yes. An E flat. And a lot of times you can also check yourself by coming to the 12th fret sometimes, or finding that other root note on here, like say D. I can come down here to the 12th fret and there's a D note. And it also helps you learn what notes are on the fretboard as well. And then they also have minor bar chords, and it's essentially the same thing. This is a G minor and a C minor, and you do the same thing with those. There's A minor and there's B minor. For C minor, come back down here to the C minor. There's a D minor, and you can move that up a half a step, and there's an E flat minor. Or you can come back down here to the C minor. You can drop that down a half step, and you have a B minor, B flat minor, and then back down to your open A minor. And that's essentially all you're doing. You're just you're making chords with your last 3 fingers, but acting like this is your nut or capo or whatever. It's essentially all you're doing. And now then we're going to go into what I would call a C bar chord, in a way. And you're kind of already doing this in the open position if you think about it. So if we're here in D, and you're thinking, oh, that's just a regular D chord. Well, you can get this note, F sharp or G flat, right here on your D string on the 4th fret. Which that's actually a small, what I would call a small bar chord, because you're barring all the way across that, and you're just adding. So if you have a long enough finger, if you're able to do this, if you look at this right, that's actually a C shape right here on these last 3 fingers. So there again, you're really just barring the last, from the G string down to the high E, you're just barring those down. And that can be used all the way up the fretboard too. You can jump that all the way up to F if you wanted to, or E, or if you wanted to, D flat. And you can just continue that on throughout the fretboard of the guitar or anything. And it works for mandolin as well. You can make bar chords, which I will have to do another video on at some point in time. But that's something that is very important for any guitar playing, whether it's bluegrass, whether it's country, because I also play a lot of Telecaster as well. And when you play especially country, you play a lot of bar chords to essentially because there's a lot of swing in country music, a lot of this that's how how I do it. If I wanted a real swingy tune, I could just kind of go. If I wanted to have a little swingier melody or anything like that. But that's essentially what I a lot of times use bar chords for. But they're also a great learning tool, especially when, as I would call the cheater, as I would call it. As a young man, I didn't really use one of these a lot. Really, just if I did, it was just mainly for the tone. Um, Once I learned how to play and mastered it with open strings, I really started diving into the bar chords and how I could play less with the capo, practicing, and learn more where all these chords were and in reference to what notes were being played. And so I've got to where I've learned, even though I may be capoed up in, let's say, B flat, or excuse me, on the 3rd fret, where G would be B flat. It's in the G position, but it's in B flat. But I know that when I go to the E minor position, I know that's actually G minor. Or even if I added a bar chord in right here, I would call that the B minor position, but that's actually D minor. And the reason why I would know that is because there's the root note. I know it at the 12th fret, or if you look at your guitar, the double dots. There's your two matching a root note. So I know that is a D minor. It's that way and it just keeps repeating itself over and over. So if you do this a lot, you really get to know what notes are on what fret and what part of the fretboard it's at. It's a useful tool. Because a lot of times, and this is where it gets into why I call the capo a cheater, is because you can cheat with this. You can say that we're capoed in A flat, but it may be in the G position. Well, you may see somebody capoed up here on the 4th fret, but in an E position. But to my ear, I know that's already an E flat, and I know what position he or she or whoever's playing is in. I know that where I play will be in this G position, and no matter what he or she does, you train your ear to what the key is, and you can be playing here while Bobby Joe is playing in the E position but in the same key. And it just takes practice over time and stuff. And if I was to tell a young person who's learning what he or she should do as far as learning the fretboard, learn bar chords extremely well, to where you know what key is on what fret. And then the same way with scales, if you get to where you learn scales, if you can learn a G major scale, it'll work throughout the whole fretboard. And one key thing that I always remembered when I was young was when I was learning and was told once you hit this double dot thing, it just starts over. So essentially, if you wanted to, you could, if you're able to, you're very blessed if you're able to. You're essentially barring, if you could, bar here on the 12th fret, you have an E chord. Well, your nut's doing the job down here on the guitar or whatever instrument. And essentially you just start over. And so that's one key thing. But also is that this is actually a bar chord and you don't even realize it. You're just able to play it open down here due to the intonation and everything. So that's kind of what I do as far as knowing where everything is at and how I have been able to train my ear watching other people, and then learning my bar chords, learning my, essentially all my scales. But that's about the best that I can explain as far as what I do as far as finding chords and kind of comprehending it in my mind, if you will, because that's how I taught myself how to find all these notes. So I hope you learned something from this, and please leave a comment if you like these videos. I really do enjoy making these videos and trying to show people how I was able to do this, how I was able to learn, and the importance of all these different elements that I explained. And so thank you all. I'm going to try to take it out on a tune that I really love to play. And I hadn't played it in a while, but so I may be a little bit rusty on it. But I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please subscribe if you liked all the content. And please leave a comment. So thank you all so very much.